Welcome into the Vestavia Hills City Schools podcast. I'm Whit McGee.
And I'm Brooke Wedgworth.
All right, Brooke. So fall officially began on September 23rd this year. What is your favorite thing about the fall?
Well, it's definitely the weather, but I'm still waiting on the fall weather. So when it just kind of cools off a little bit, it's not quite so hot. And obviously just enjoying college and high school football in that fall weather. Probably my favorite part.
That is nice.
What about you?
Oh, yeah. Our neighbors have got a really nice patio where they've got like a TV mounted. And so this time of year, getting into cooler weather, football season, it's like the best hangout on a Saturday to just go watch a game and relax and like the leaves changing and all of that. But it's just nice to have a new season and all the fun things that come with that. Now, the thing that we are looking at today is something that's a new season for education in the state, something that affects pretty much everybody on the elementary school level, and that is the Alabama Literacy Act. You may have heard about this, may have been something that was in the news a couple of years ago. You may have forgotten about it, but this year things are going to be changing with that. And so if you've got a kid in elementary school, this episode pertains to you. And my guest today needs no introduction. It is my longtime co-host of the podcast, Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Vestavia Hills City Schools, Brooke Wedgworth. Hi, Brooke.
Hey, Whit. So glad to join you today.
Right. So really, this is something that is a particular focus point for you in your work in the schools and in the professional learning that you do with teachers to help guide them on teaching literacy to our students on the elementary level, making sure that our kiddos know how to read and do all the things that come with an understanding of the English language. So this is something that you've been focusing on a lot, and particularly this year now that there's some changes, which we'll get to a little bit later. But first, if you've never heard of this, or if you like me and you need a refresher, what is the Alabama Literacy Act?
Yes, so we have been talking about the Literacy Act for a few years, and obviously literacy has been a big focus for us. Being a previous elementary teacher, obviously now in the curriculum and instruction role, that's something we always really focus on is that literacy piece. But with the passing of the Alabama Literacy Act, there's a lot more focus on this Literacy Act and a lot of requirements that come along with it. So just to refresh everyone on what it is, the Literacy Act was actually passed back in 2019, and the goal was to help improve reading in Alabama public schools. And really, ultimately, we want to ensure that all of our students are reading on grade level by the end of third grade. So we know that reading, the whole literacy piece, is so important for students and even adults, really for the rest of their lives. It's a key piece. And so with research, we know how crucial it is for students to really be at that point of proficiency by the end of third grade. So that's really why I think third grade was established as kind of the timeline in the Literacy Act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just so important and arguably the most important thing from a curriculum and a learning standpoint that elementary teachers do is to establish understanding of reading and knowledge of reading and proficiency in that for elementary kiddos. Now, you mentioned this was something that first came on the scene back in 2019, and then it seems like something happened around 2020, 2021 that kind of took our eyes off of that. But because of COVID and some things associated with that, there were some delays to full implementation of this. So now that we are in 2023, as I understand it, some of this is now getting fully implemented, no more delays. Can you talk about what the delays were and what's changing for this year?
Sure, absolutely. So just so you know, and I'll share more about this, the location, but we do have a copy of the full Literacy Act, the whole law, on our website. So it's something you can read in your free time if you would like. It's several pages and lots of educational terms in there. So I'm going to try to break it down and really simplify it today. But there are a lot of pieces in the Literacy Act. And the good news for us, Whit, is that we've been working on literacy. Like I said, it's really been, something we've worked on forever as teachers. So a lot of the things that are required in the Literacy Act, we already had in place. But it also caused us to really evaluate what we're doing and seeing, are there pieces that we're missing or things that we really need to continue to revise and make better? So that's the good news. It really has caused us to look at what we're doing and the instruction that we're providing for students to make sure that we're doing the very best that we can. So I'll talk about a few pieces that are in the Literacy Act, and then also talk about some of the changes you may see for this year. So first off, there are required literacy assessments within the Literacy Act. Again, those were things we already had in place where we monitored our kids 3 times a year and really did a screening. We use DIBELS in kindergarten and first grade for that. And second grade and up, we use iReady. So if you've been in our school system, you're probably familiar with both of those. You've probably just recently seen your students' beginning of the year reports for DIBELS and iReady. So like I said, that's one thing that is required, is that we have an assessment. It's an approved state assessment, and that we're really using that assessment not to just give kids a test, but we're actually using that to see where kids are, what they need in reading instruction, and then making sure we're providing that for them.
So that those assessments, since they're done here at the beginning of the year, are designed to give families and teachers a good understanding of where a child is right now in their understanding of reading and their proficiency. But then if there's specific things that a child needs in order to move up to the next level, to improve where they are, that assessment is going to give them that information.
Absolutely. And we have other, assessments and, of course, classroom assessments and observations we use as well, because we know this is one piece, but it does really give us great information. And so obviously that's why we feel like it's important to share that information, those reports with parents, to really communicate with that. And then again, it gives us an idea of where a student is starting. And then obviously they'll be assessed again middle of the year and end of the year, because we're really looking at progress and growth for every single student. So regardless of where you start, are you growing? And then we also use that to help us identify areas for intervention. So if a kid is not quite on grade level, maybe they have a deficiency in a specific area of reading, then we can really target that with some Tier 2 intervention in the classroom, or even Tier 3 intervention, where they go out and work with one of our very qualified, excellent interventionist. So that's another piece that's in the Literacy Act, is that we provide that intervention for our students. Again, something we already had in place. We actually have locally funded interventionists at every single one of our elementary schools. And those people have some very specific qualifications and certifications and trainings they've done that help them to be to just be really effective at delivering intervention. And so we've also purchased additional intervention programs. There are some that are required in the Literacy Act or approved, and so we make sure that we're complying with that and just continuing to provide training for our interventionists. So again, something we already had in place because we knew that was important, but we've just really ramped that up.
Yeah, and that's, I'd like to jump in for a second and just say that seems like something that has been a priority for our school system for years and years, even before the Literacy Act existed, was making sure that kids can read on grade level. And so when you talk about things like Tier 2 intervention and Tier 3 intervention, my sense is what you're really talking about there is more time and more opportunity for individual students to get the learning and the support that they need in order to get, grasp some of those reading concepts that they need.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes kids they just need it again. Maybe they didn't hear it the first time. Maybe they didn't grasp the concept the first time. They need additional practice, or they need to be taught it in a different way. So like sometimes it's repeated exposure, it's a smaller group, it's a different program. And so that's really what you'll see when the teacher does small group, like a tier 2 intervention in a classroom, it just may be an additional time of practice with that, or when they're working with a tier 3 interventionist.
And I, from what I've seen on a lot of elementary teachers' classroom schedules, if you look at like what a typical day looks like in the classroom, they actually set aside that intervention time that, hey, we're going to have, a group or of students or even an individual student come over with me at my desk, and we'll sit down and, work through some of these things that they need help on. So this is not like an add-on that a teacher has to do, like, well, and I figure out how to schedule time among everything else we do in the day to support those students. But this is just, they build it in.
They do. They really do. And it is a lot to fit into a day, but they do. I mean, they prioritize that time with the kids, and they do the same thing in math as well, because they know students need that.
All right. So we talked a little bit about assessment at the beginning of the year. So what does that look like over the course of the year, and then the assessment that actually determines toward the end of the year what happens next?
Absolutely. And one thing I want to add in before we move to that, because this is an important piece of that, is so if and the Literacy Act really pertains mainly to kindergarten through third grade. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are things we're doing for students after third grade, so if it's not like we say, oh, you've made it through third grade, you're on your own. And that's certainly not. I mean, it obviously continues even beyond elementary school. So we still have intervention in place. And, there's still a great focus on literacy. The Literacy Act itself is just so specific to K through third. So that's important for our listeners to know as well. But if a student in kindergarten through third grade exhibits what we call a consistent reading deficiency, so we see over multiple data points that they really do have a deficiency. It's maybe not just something where they need a little extra help. We will provide that obviously for them, and that, like we said, they would probably be getting tier 3 intervention, but we also are required to develop a plan for them. So you might hear someone say a SHRIP, which is one of our favorite acronyms, but it stands for...
Hey, we love our acronyms in education. That's one that's new to me.
I know, but it stands for Student Reading Improvement Plan.
Okay.
Again, if we've ever seen a kid with a reading deficiency in the past, we've always put a plan in place for them, but now it's just specific to what's required in the Literacy Act. So the kid would have a plan in place. The parent is notified. Then the parent is part of really developing the plan along with their teachers and other people in the school. And the plan really spells out what we're going to provide for your student as far as intervention, what programs we're going to use, that we're going to continue to monitor their progress and share that progress with you. And then if we see need for additional support, which this is part of the Literacy Act, we will offer before or after school tutoring.
Okay.
For our students with a reading improvement plan. And then we also offer summer reading camp as part of the Literacy Act. And again, that's for students K through third grade who have a student reading improvement plan. They exhibit that reading deficiency. And so I will say that was something we had not done in the past prior to the Literacy Act, but it is required that we offer 60 hours in the summer of reading camp. And it is a very in-depth planning process to make that happen. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you now that we've done it for a few summers, it is absolutely one of my favorite things to work on and to do, and just to be with those kids for the month of June. It is absolutely amazing. So I'm excited that was part of the Literacy Act.
Well, and I've gotten to see those every summer as well. And I have to just commend you and the teachers, because first of all, with this summer reading camp, it is staffed and taught by Vestavia Hills City Schools teachers. So our teachers are taking their summer, a big chunk of it, and saying, I want to help do more for these, for our students who need additional help in reading and literacy, which I think is just amazing that they would be so giving of their time. But y'all have really structured those summer reading camps in a way that is enjoyable for the students, that's rewarding, that makes them feel like they're getting some wins and not having to go to summer school. You know, it's
Yes.
something that's fun and engaging for them and gives them something to do, a neat activity where they can really dive into literacy and reading, which I think is great.
I will say, and like Whit said, it's our teachers teach it. It's the whole month of June. So that is a big commitment, but they really, the ones who do it, love it. And so our goal is that it is fun and engaging for our students. Obviously, we want them to really, we're targeting reading the whole time. So we want them to learn and be successful and make good gains this summer. But we want them to want to be there. It's not a punishment, but it's how can we help you get ahead a little bit more and feel successful. And that's the best thing is these kids, they really do shine at summer camp and they feel some great success. And so I think that's probably why I enjoy it so much. Plus the people who work it are amazing. So shout out to our reading camp teachers because they really do make it amazing.
Lots of resources available throughout the year to students that need that support. But focusing specifically on the part of the Alabama Literacy Act that is now being implemented this year, it is a retention piece, and you're going to speak to that. But in order to determine who might have to be held back, there's a lot of things, a lot of steps that you go through before you get to that point. And one of them is that assessment in the spring. And so can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And this is one of those things you mentioned that really changed. So it was in place when this was passed in 2019, but obviously, like you said, we had a few things happen since then. So this retention piece really kept getting delayed. But it really will happen or go into effect for this school year. So it's obviously my least favorite part of the Literacy Act because I love the focus on, the positive pieces and the services we can provide for kids. But we can't ignore that this retention piece is in place for this year. So the kids will take ACAP summative assessment in the spring, just like they did, starting in second grade. But the focus is really on our third graders taking that ACAP summative assessment. And so for us, we're hoping that everything we've put in place, the reading instruction, the intervention, the tutorial support, the reading camp will help so that our students are not really struggling by the time that they get to this summative piece. Mm-hmm. But that's an assessment the kids take in the spring. And so the first really piece they'll look at is if the third graders score above the cut score for the ACAP in the spring. So if they score above that cut score, then they are just automatically promoted to fourth grade, and that really kind of ends that discussion. So there are other pathways to promotion, which I like to talk about more than the retention piece. Mm-hmm. So even if they are below the cut score, they will be invited to summer reading camp if they weren't already on a reading improvement plan and invited. So that's one piece, again, offering some services for our students. Then they will have the opportunity to take the ACAP supplemental assessment at the end of reading camp. So it's just a shortened, condensed version that really focuses on just a specific part of the reading assessment.
Okay.
So if they take that then, they'll have the opportunity to make a passing score then. Again, that would be another pathway to promotion. If they don't pass it, we have another opportunity, which is to show that they've mastered what's considered essential third grade reading standards. And that was determined by the state, by committee. So we'll be keeping a portfolio of students' work and assessments. So if we're able to show that they've mastered those standards, then that's another way that they could be promoted onto fourth grade. And then really, I guess the fourth option is what we call a good cause, or what we call a good cause exemption. And all of what I'm sharing, we're going to direct you to these resources at the end as well, because I know it's a lot to take in when you're listening. But for our students who are identified as English language learners, if they've had less than 3 years of instruction in English as a second language, that's considered a good cause exemption. So they would go on. For our students with disabilities, who maybe have a IEP or 504 plan, if they've been receiving intensive reading intervention for more than 2 years, then that would be a good cause exemption. And then for our students who've been receiving intensive reading intervention for 2 or more years and were previously retained in another grade, will also be a good cause exemption. So there's lots of options for promotion. So that's exciting to me.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions to that. The first is, as you were listing off all of the potential exemptions or extra opportunities to not be retained, to be promoted from 3rd to 4th grade, I think it's important to point out that this is all Alabama state law. Like the Literacy Act, which was passed by the legislature, is what determined these exemptions, that determined the measure by which we assess whether a student is ready for promotion or if they've got to do one of these things or meet one of these exemptions. These are not things that the school system had any say in. This is all Alabama law.
Yes, that is correct. And I think that's important because this is something, if you go to any school system in Alabama, you will hear the same thing. It's not, like you said, it's not specific to our district, and actually has been, something that's been passed in several states across the country. So not even just specific even to Alabama.
And the other thing that I think might be helpful, just to put this in context, is that the overwhelming majority of Vestavia Hills Elementary students already, from what the last few years, we've known this was coming. So we've been doing this assessment and just seeing, okay, well, where is the cut score? Who would be promoted and retained if the law were in place? The overwhelming majority of our elementary students do just fine, and they are able to go on to the next level. So I want to try to, not alarm anybody. I mean, this is certainly something that, again, is applicable to everybody who, if you've got a kid in 3rd grade or under, something that we are focused on as a school system. But I don't want to just scare anybody into thinking there's just going to be, hundreds and hundreds of students that might have to worry about this.
Yes, you're correct. And that's, we have a small, number who for various reasons may not necessarily score above that level in the first ACAT. But then, like I said, with the other opportunities, the good cause exemptions, the majority of our students are promoted and ready, even this past year would be ready to go on to 4th grade. Mm-hmm. And again, that other piece of this is, even though this is specific to kindergarten through 3rd grades, we still have, so even if a student is promoted onto 4th grade with the good cause exemption, or maybe they didn't do as well as you would have hoped on this assessment, we're going to continue to support them. So it's not, you've made it to 4th, you're on your own now, but we still have those interventions in place, as I mentioned. So it's still going to be support in the classroom, support outside of the classroom as needed. And that's something we want to continue because we know our kids need that support to continue to grow in their literacy.
And look, the reason why we have such good data here, our data indicates that our students do so well on this is because this has been something that we've been focusing on for many years in our school system, and our teachers are so well equipped to support students in their learning in literacy. And I just think that speaks to the great work that our teachers do throughout the school system and have been doing for a long time. It also speaks to the support that kids have at home. That's a big part of this, is what parents and families can be doing to support their kids at home with reading and with literacy. What would you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just, like you said, our teachers are so well informed and trained, and they do really work diligently to provide the best instruction for our kids. But we know that family, that home piece is crucial too, because it just goes hand in hand. And the more practice kids have, obviously, the more successful they're going to be. So we'll be sharing some resources that you can look up and check out to find some really detailed examples and plans, even specific to each grade level. But one thing I would encourage parents to do, or a couple of things, one would be just really working on the oral language piece, and that comes from conversation. So having conversations with your kid, if it's in the car, if it's over dinner, breakfast, obviously whenever you have those moments, I think that is a great literacy piece that sometimes we forget can be so crucial. So really helping them to develop that oral language piece, and becoming aware of words everywhere, So if you're in the grocery store, if you're in church, if you're, driving and you're reading billboards, that print, that environmental print is so crucial too, especially to our younger students. And then obviously the most important thing that parents can do is reading with your kids. And so that starts from really the moment they're born. So if you have really young ones at home, I would encourage you to read to them. And I think the more you can read to them, obviously the better it's going to be. So even if you have older kids, reading to them is not a bad thing. So I would encourage them, if they're able, to have them read to you some, listen to them read, ask questions, make it fun, enjoyable. You read some, they read some. And even if they're resistant to maybe read, or maybe they're not quite reading yet, just continue reading to them, because I think the more they can hear that, again, that will help with their reading and comprehension piece as well. So making reading fun, getting books and just enjoying those together is something that's really a great experience.
I know that's something that we really value in our home, is that nightly opportunity to read. And look, I know families are busy. There's so much going on in so many it's just carving out, a little bit of time every evening to stop what you're doing and read is just, that may be the last thing on our minds at the end of a long day. But thinking of that as an investment in your child, and if this is the thing that keeps them on track, that keeps them advancing through school with their peers and succeeding and winning in school, man, it's really not that big of an investment of time. And it's, like I said, it's something that we have really, really come to treasure in the McGee home. So thank you for that recommendation.
Yes.
So look, this was a lot to cover and process in a little less than a half hour. So if we've got somebody listening that they want to try to go back and get more information, maybe you're a visual learner and you need a PDF that breaks all of this down, where can people go to find that information?
Definitely. So on our district website, you can go to the Teaching and Learning tab, and we have under that Alabama Literacy Act. So Whit and I've worked hard to really try to keep adding resources and links to that. So I know we have, I think, a couple of presentations from past years on the Alabama Literacy Act, and then lots of resources. The newest FAQ page is, to me, one of the best. It really simplifies what the Literacy Act is. It has the pathways to promotion that I spoke of earlier, and then it has a great QR link for resources that you can scan. We've also linked several resources. Like I mentioned, those grade-specific ideas of things you can do with your students at home are on there. So I'd encourage you to check that out and see what all you can find there. You're also welcome to email me. So my email is wedgworthbc@vhcs.us. So you're welcome to email me with questions. I'm always happy to help. And then you can also reach out to your elementary schools where your student is currently enrolled. Our administrators, our classroom teachers, our reading specialists, which we have at each school, they are very knowledgeable of the Alabama Literacy Act, ways to help your kids. And then they will also, each school will be doing its own communication kind of parent presentation piece on the Alabama Literacy Act. So I know some of those will be coming up soon in the next month or two. So look for more information on those.
That's great. I think the takeaway that I have from that, Brooke, is that if you are a parent who is concerned about this, if this is something that is a top of mind for you, just know you are not alone. There is a wealth of resources available to you from the school system, and we are more than happy to talk about this, because this is something we talk about here all the time. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, as you can tell, it's something I like to talk about. Literacy is definitely something I'm very passionate about, and I have been for years. So I'm always happy to talk to parents and see what I can do to help.
Absolutely. Well, Brooke, thanks for all of this. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Good information for families, and thank you for listening to the podcast today. We'll talk to you again soon.